Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week, along with some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends, we review films either current or classic. Of course, all with a lovable, queer, gay, bi, twist, all the fun things. It is Pride Month, you guys, and because it is Pride Month, I do believe a change of scenery is in order. Diddle-doop, 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 dun-dun-dun-dun.
Woo!
Yeah,
Let's
baby.
get gay.
Goodbye, Bear Pride colors. We'll come back to you at some point, but we needed to diversify,
The movie queer
rainbowize this thing.
podcast.
That's
That's
right.
right.
That's right. And to be fair, we still have the Bear Pride colors in the logo. We just have a nice rainbow background.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's good stuff. All right, listen up, everybody. We have a movie to review this week, and that movie is Inside Out 2, the follow-up, of course, to Inside Out from Disney-Pixar. There's always the inevitable question: can a sequel be better than its parent film? I'm sure that's going to come up as part of our discussion. I'm so sure, in fact, because I have it as a note on my agenda to talk about, because I'm curious what my co-hosts think. As always, we watch these movies and we withhold from each other. We don't talk about it much if we're going to talk about it on the show, because who wants to blow their load before you get to the orgy? Like, how does that help you? It doesn't really. So I'm earning our explicit tag already, and we're like a minute in. But you know what? That's okay.
Fortunately, it's a kids' movie.
It fits, right? Sorry to anyone who tuned into this show to hear us review a kids movie. Anyway, you've heard from them already, but let me formally introduce two incredible people that I literally could not do this show without. Jim Pugliafico is 10 feet down the hall from me. Hey, babe, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm excited to be back at it with you guys tonight, and we've got a movie to talk about. I think it's going to be a fun discussion. I'm not tipping anything, I don't think, unless you people have gone to Letterbox like you're supposed to. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fun discussion.
Good. Well, with you as part of it, I know that it will be. So glad to have you, babe. We also have somebody else on the show with us. And before we introduce him, I think did I hear it over the week? Was it bells?
Yeah.
Did you hear those bells over the weekend?
I heard
I
the bells.
I definitely heard the bells. William Lindis,
I can hear the bells.
Mr. Married Man himself. Oh, look at that beautiful ring. Will, congratulations to you and Wiggles once again. How's married life treating you, man?
Yeah, so far so good. I mean, it's one of those things where we've been together for 13 years, engaged for 3. So, this isn't one of those situations where everything changes, right? We kind of settled back into the same things right afterwards, but it allowed us to sort of take that next step with our relationship, one that we been ready for a while. I will say the ceremony was a blast. I put it up on my Facebook page, and feel free to check it out. William Lindis, just look for me there. That's the plug at the end of the show, but it's also the plug at the beginning. Because something kind of special and magical happened in the ceremony, and I'd like to take a moment and just talk about it. We did it Justice of the Peace. We wanted to go really small, just a handful of family and friends. We're going to do a bigger reception later on, but we really just wanted to have something kind of small and easy. And so we're there in the courthouse. The judge is amazing. He's just like full of energy, vivacious. And we're going through, we do the rings, we do the I do's, and we're getting ready to get to the power vested in me part. And as soon as the sentence ends, there's a loud and the power goes out.
Oof.
And it comes back up about 10 seconds later, and we're all just dying laughing because it was...
I literally just watched it.
Yeah.
I dialed it up while you were, and it's like, boop. That is amazing.
And it made it it made it fun. It made me remember. And if it had been power outage for like minutes and minutes and minutes, that wouldn't have been as fun. But just right where it happened towards the end of the ceremony, just for a few seconds, it came back up, and he was able to go straight into the you may kiss your husband's situation line. But such a blast. Had a wonderful time. Very happy to have done it. Thanks for letting me share the story. It's just it's been all I've been thinking about the last few days. I know we have a movie to watch and review too, but that's been that's been my plug for the week. Getting married. Do recommend.
Very good, very good. Yeah, well, it's interesting. It's I guess it's kind of a special thing when something just totally spontaneous happens right in the moment, and it kind of puts a stamp on that time for you. Like, you'll never forget, like, hey, remember that, at 30 years you'd be like, hey, remember that time, Scott, when we were getting married and the lights went out? Wasn't that a blast? So I mean, we had something similar happen. Ours was outside, but we had to actually move our whole wedding day a day because of weather. So like, it's always it's interesting that there's something special to help you, or to look back on, either with humor or fondness, to like put a stamp on that day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who can say that their love is so powerful it destabilized a power grid for a few seconds?
Right, took down the power grid.
Our love is electric.
but again, in Texas, you're not really saying much.
Yeah. I had a friend who I sent the video to, and he's big on puns, and his first thing was like, wow, that took a dark turn. I'm like, that was a really good one. Really good one, Thomas.
That was really good. Yeah, it was super good. Oh goodness. Well, I know we have a movie, but real life is so much more important, and we just love and adore you and Scott so much. And it was great to see a video of y'all tying the knot and doing your thing. And I know maybe a lot hasn't functionally changed, but it's a big milestone. So we wanted to celebrate you guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, speaking of movies to review, we've got a movie to review.
There goes my plug for the end of the show.
Scratch it out. Come up with something else. We're going to be talking Inside Out 2. The follow-up, of course, to Inside Out. As usual, we'll talk about this movie spoiler-free for about the first 10 minutes or so. We'll give you our initial impressions, our thoughts. If you're kind of on the fence about seeing it, let's face it, sequels sometimes are dicey. If hearing other opinions is helpful to you, we're happy to share those. But we'll give you a fair warning before we open things up to spoilers. Guys, we have a ton, and I mean a shit ton of people on the live stream right now watching. I'm guessing because they're probably waiting for the spoiler discussion, but hey, everybody, welcome. Be sure to say hey in the live chat. Let us know your thoughts as we go along as well. But Jim, Will, are you ready to delve into our minds and let our emotions run free with Inside Out 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Got my skates on. I'm ready to hit the ice. Let's go.
Nice. We're going to talk about the hockey stuff for sure. But all right. Well, here we go. Our discussion of Inside Out 2. Hey, Will.
Hello.
How you doing? How about in the goodness that you're doing right now, you maybe kick this one off for us if you don't mind. Give us a little bit of setup. What is Inside Out 2? I think most people probably get the idea, but more importantly, maybe share your initial thoughts. What did you think of this one? Is it worth catching in theaters, waiting for the inevitable shift to Disney Plus, or skipping entirely? What did you think?
Yeah, so Inside Out 2. A few years ago, Pixar gave us Inside Out, which was a movie about these 5 emotions, specifically joy, disgust, anger, fear, and sadness, that lived in the mind of a a young girl named Riley, and each of these emotions took turns at the console, controlling and dictating sort of how this young girl interacted with and experienced life. And in this world, everyone has these emotions and this sort of like business structure that lives inside of our minds. Well, in Inside Out 2, the girl Riley is now a teenager. She is about to enter high school, and because she has grown up, the emotions that she experiences are more complex. So those 5 emotions that we're used to from the first film are now joined by other emotions, such as anxiety and a few others we'll talk about, who throw a huge wrench in the works. So couple of things about this movie. First of all, it's very good. I'm going to start by that. It's a very, very good movie. You should definitely go see it. I think that much like with Inside Out, Inside Out 2 is very, very relatable. And I almost think more so for adults even than kids. One of the few pieces of like negative feedback that I've seen from people about it, where I've seen some people who took their kids to go see it and like the kids didn't quite connect with it as much as they did the first one. But I do think if you're an adult who has already gone through puberty and has gone through these complex emotions, I think you're going to really relate to a lot of the stuff that happens here. The animation is beautiful and gorgeous. I think there are some moments in here that absolutely feel like absolute gems in terms of how they reflect the particular emotion or emotional state that they're doing. You know, I will say that I think this movie is messier than the first one in that it had more characters and it didn't necessarily know what to do with all of them. So there are sometimes moments where I think compared to the first one, which I think was a little tighter, this one did have a few moments where characters got lines just because you couldn't write them out because they were already in it from the first one. But the real star of this one comes from any of the scenes that feature Riley, the girl, in her real life. I think we get to see a lot more of her as a character than we saw in the first one. I think she was almost like an automaton in some ways in the first one, being pushed aside by the whims of her emotions. And here we got to see a little bit more of her own will and her own personality come to the forefront. This is a very good movie. And if I do pick apart any flaws when we get into the spoiler section, at best it's nitpicking. I think this is a strong recommend that that you should definitely go see, especially if you're someone who has had your own complex journey with your emotions, which, you know, spoiler alert, is probably everybody. I think you're going to find something here that will help you relate to yourself and the way you experience the world in maybe a new light. Very good movie. Very good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for those initial thoughts. Jim, how about for you? Do you feel as glowingly about this film as Will? Is your regard for it maybe a bit more dim comparatively? How did it land for you?
Oh no, I think I'm right there with what Will already said. I think this is a very, very, very good movie. I I want to talk about how maybe Will this might have landed with kids, and because this is something that we should talk about in a non-spoilery way. But I think you're right. I think I saw a lot of we saw it twice. Both times the theater was pretty full, and there were a lot of families there, with anywhere from young kids to like young teens. Kids. And although I didn't do an audience poll at the end, it was good to see a film that families could go and watch that wasn't just like super silliness. It actually had a message that can be very relatable to both parents and to the kids, and maybe something that they can talk about, like, together as a family or one-on-one kind of after the film. Like, what happened to Riley there? What was she doing? Why did it appear that she did this or whatever? And I don't want to spoil anything, but I think it's wonderful to have such a high quality movie that people can go see, and families and get families back, into the movie theaters to see something like this. There's a lot of this movie that I like. Do I think it's as good as the first movie? It's close, but I don't think it's quite there. And it's hard for me. I think the movie itself is as well made as the first movie. I think the first Inside Out movie. I just think, Will, like you said, I think there was a little bit of messiness there with maybe too many emotion characters and some of them getting lost a little bit. Some of them saying stuff and you're like, which emotion is that? And why is she saying that? Or he saying that? That happened a couple times. And also, it's hard to match the impact that a first movie in this series had on me when it came out. I think it was like blew me away with how in touch it was with like children's emotions and stuff like that. This one is in touch with like the emotions of kids as they go through puberty and kind of transition from childhood to adult. I think it tries to deal with that, and I think it does a really good job. Kind of in the same way as the first movie, it just for some reason wasn't as impactful, right? We've seen this Pixar movie do this before. It's doing it again. I think it does it almost as well. So, yeah, I think this is one people should go see. I don't think if you have to wait for this one, fine, but definitely see it. But I think it's worth going out to see in movie theaters right now.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts as well. While you were chatting, we heard from the delightful, the super handsome, the incredibly cute, and really fucking all around great person, Cisco Salgado, who says that he's watching his favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos on his phone right now and is sending kisses and hugs to all, but
lovely,
especially to Will
especially
this
me.
time.
Oh,
nope,
damn it!
It's actually Will. Sorry, because of your nuptials, Will.
Nice.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
well deserved.
So,
if I have to give up the spotlight for 1 week, I guess.
Yeah. I'm taking it this week. I'm taking it this week.
This is my envy talking.
Yeah, wait till Disgust comes into play a little later. Anyway, Cisco Salgado, love and adore you, friend, and great to hear from you. Glad you're enjoying the show. Let's see. For me, man. Well, actually, let me precede the conversation a little bit. Listeners, there's a bunch of you hanging out with us right now. Feel free to drop some thoughts in the live chat. We're going to talk here in just a couple minutes about is this better than the first film or not, and see what folks think. But if you have some thoughts on that, go ahead and drop them in there, and then we'll read off some thoughts when we get there. But my initial thoughts, I was really worried going into this one. I loved the first one so much. I think it's probably in like one of my top 25 movies of all time. Like it has that kind of honor. Maybe even top 10. I don't know. Alex Vogel says, spill that pre-seed, daddy. I mean, I
wow.
Woo, I'm a little hot under the collar right now.
He wants to make you Inside Out too.
Isn't that where the pre-seed should go? Anyway,
yeah.
So I was really worried because it's like sequels, right? Like 98% of the time, sequels do not hold up to the original, and a lot of times they're just a cash grab to try and like keep pumping that nostalgia well for the first one. Jim will get there, and so I tried to kind of set those worries aside a little bit, but like from all the marketing that I was seeing for this film, it's just like, ugh, this looks not great. It's just not going to be a great thing. And then I saw this movie and I probably bawled like 5 or 6 times. And I have to tell you, I have never felt more seen by a movie in my whole entire life. And it was incredibly cathartic and healing to feel seen like that. It also gave me language that I could use with people in my life to help them understand me a little bit better. And I'm not going to go into it any deeper than that yet, probably in spoilers. But I so appreciate Disney, Pixar, all the cast for like, I don't know, just giving this thing that I think will help people relate a lot more to each other in some ways. So I'm going to bank most of my time for spoilers, but this was fucking fantastic. Jim, you said you don't think that this one was maybe as good as the first. Listeners are dropping some thoughts in the chat, but let's open that up for just a minute or so.
Let me clarify one thing really quick.
Sure.
I think the filmmaking is just as good. I don't think its impact on me was quite as powerful as the first one. How's that?
That makes sense.
That's probably more on me than it is on the movie, but yeah, how it landed with me, you know, we're talking the difference here between like a 5-star and a 4.5 star. So, you know, this movie is awesome. It's very, very good. And my complaints with it are, Will, I think like yours, probably nitpicky.
Couple of other interesting points about this sort of in the non-spoiler section. First of all, I recommend you go to the IMDb page for it. There's like IMDb does these like branded headers for like big studio releases, and the one for this one has all 9 of the emotions that are featured in this movie. And if you hover over them, the others gray out and that one highlights. And if you click on them, there's like a couple second little video that plays across the header. It's just, you know, they didn't have to do that, but they did. Other thing that's worth noting here is you will see a couple of changed voice actors. I know there was a little bit of behind the scenes with this where Disgust and Fear were originally played by Mindy Kaling and Bill Hader. Apparently there was an issue when they were invited back for Inside Out 2. The initial offer was something like Amy Poehler was going to get like 50 times more than what any of the other returning cast members were. Geez. And they said, you know, this is,
maybe you need somebody else for this.
So they declined. There was, I guess, some back and forth on that too. But after that, I think both Hader and Kaling, who are doing quite well for themselves otherwise, said, you know, so they came back with Liza LaPera as Disgust and Tony Hale as Fear, which is a very, very good cast for him, like a remarkably good casting for him.
Well, fun story. I didn't even notice a change in the voice actors. So don't bring real life into this and spoil things though. Well, let's talk about the magic of this. No,
let's talk about let's get rid of those.
Don't ruin the illusion.
It's interesting that they got an offer and they felt disgust over what they were offered, and they feared that if they came back, it would be for less than they were worth. So
maybe some envy of, you know, Amy Poehler.
So they practiced some good emotional health and declined the offer.
They also changed Riley's voice voice actor.
That one makes a little more sense because because if you're aging a character up, you're going to get a different voice actor to play. Whereas the emotions are all static.
The original voice actor is is probably what now, like
50. I mean,
I mean, it's 8 or 9 years after the first movie, so she's probably 20.
So real quick, Alexander Fogel wants to know, how did they get the cameras inside? Are you trying to see the pre-seed, the regular seed, and the post-seed? Because that's why we would need cameras inside. Just saying. All right.
They actually took the technology from the old Herman's Head show. And used that because
and Inner Space. They shrunk a film crew down and they took a submarine into the brain. Anyway, okay. So we got some thoughts coming in about, is this better than the first one? It looks like overwhelmingly people do not think it's better than the first one, but they think it's almost just as good. So Jim, Will, I agree with you both. There are parts of this that I think were incredible and better than the first one. But I think overall, I think the first one just slightly edges it out. But how fucking cool is it that we have 2 Inside Out movies that are that strong and that fucking awesome. So I feel pretty lucky about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, fellas, how do we feel about making that transition into Spoiler Town?
I don't know. I'm feeling a little bit anxious. No. Let's do it. Let's do it, so that our listeners don't succumb to ennui.
Ennui, aboard.
I know. That was pretty bad. Don't feel embarrassed for me.
Oh boy. All right. Here we go. The little spiel that I give every time we take things into the spoiler zone. If you've not yet seen Inside Out 2 and you plan on seeing it and don't want to have your experience with the film influenced by what we think, this is your chance to step away for the next 22 minutes and 7 seconds. We're going to be just spoiling the crap out of the first film and the second film, obviously. What do the kids say these days? Obvies? Whatever.
Obvi.
Whatever.
Whatever the fuck.
I know,
Whatever
right?
the fuck.
But if you're still hanging out with us at this point, it's because you want spoilers. So here they come. Officially fair game. Let's do all the things. Can we talk about motherfucking anxiety?
Yes.
William Lindis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
yeah,
okay.
go for it, guys.
I'm going to let you talk about it because I think obviously in this film, I think anxiety is of the new characters. This is the character that gets all the heavy lifting pretty much of the new characters. As Will had said, unfortunately with nine emotion characters, some are going to be in the forefront, like anxiety and joy and maybe a little bit of sadness. And then the rest are kind of going to have to, fade a little bit towards the back. Yeah, Brad, tell us about anxiety, even though it was interesting to see a brand new character just kind of take right over.
Well, I was actually going to go to Will on it, if you don't mind, babe, because Will, you
Yeah.
had kind of alluded, and I wanted to make sure you got to jump on that, Will. So if you don't mind, go for it.
Yeah, so anxiety is set up as I would say the antagonist of this film. As the new emotions come into play, they want to take over Riley, and not maliciously. Really, what they're doing is every single emotion wants what's best for Riley. They all come about it a different way. They all believe that what they do is an important part of protecting her from social shame, from losing opportunities in life, those types of things, right? So Maya Hawke plays anxiety and really takes the forefront of just like, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. Because if I don't do this, then the future is going to be bad for Riley. And if we don't do this, then this bad thing could happen. And has these, I think through most of the film, sort of mini spirals that you're supposed to look at in a very like, who is this asshole kind of way, right? And we get this beautiful moment kind of at the end where I think the anxiety is spiraling the most. It's at the climax of the film. We've just got this blur of activity so much that the other characters can't even get in there, and Joy breaks her way in, and we see that anxiety is moving so fast that she's also stuck still, paralyzed in spot. Yep. And I know, Brad. We'll talk. I think this is going to get personal. But as someone who medicates for anxiety, myself, and again, we'll talk about this. But it's one of those things where that is, I think, the most beautiful scene in the movie. It's terrifying. Because it's terrifying, but it lets you see exactly what that snapshot of that moment feels like. It's the equivalent to, and I don't know if anyone else has experienced this before, but like sometimes when you're feeling like really depressed about something, you don't want to listen to happy music. You want to listen to that song that is exactly as sad as you are, because by listening to that song that's exactly as sad as you are, you feel connected and tethered to something else. And that's what I feel like this movie did in that scene to me with like my own anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Now I will say that the thing that I wish the film had done a little bit better after that, compared to the first one, and this is where I think it gets a little messier. The first film really creates tangible moment of how all of these emotions blur together and become this tapestry of who we are, and they're important and they're supposed to be there. And while we do get some of that, I think sort of in the kind of the closeout of this film, it's just sort of like, don't worry, anxiety, you go sit over there, we've got this. And I think that felt a little less genuine to me, because I don't want anxiety to be a monster, but I didn't really see it felt like for Riley, at least for Riley, it was pretty easy for just to say like, well, let's just ignore anxiety and then we'll be fine. But the moment where the blur was happening, that was just cinematic gold.
Yeah.
I
agree. Go ahead, babe.
I was just gonna say a couple of things. Will, I agree with you in that kind of how it was handled in the denouement, whatever you want to call it, could have been a little bit better. I had a really great discussion with my friend Jaime the other day about how anxiety can actually be a really good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes anxiety helps you plan for possible outcomes. If it's helping you plan for the 3 most likely outcomes of an important meeting you have coming up, that's great. You can be ready and prepared. But when anxiety tries to help you plan for 385,000 possible outcomes, that's where anxiety is off the hook and not helpful at all. And so, Will, as someone who also medicates for anxiety, I'll be vulnerable too. That was an incredible thing for me to see in a kids movie of all things, how the anxiety can be useful initially, right? It was like, all right, Joy, you're great, but like, we're more complex. We're going to plan for things. We're going to help Riley. But then you see it really just take over, right? And run Riley's whole life. And that's how I feel about like my anxiety a lot of the time. And that moment where like the anxiety storm is like happening around the console, and anxiety is like frozen and like flickering in and out of existence, and Joy is able to reach in and just be like, let go, right? And then like things start to dissipate. That was huge, and I bawled during that moment. But I also really value the fact that this movie gives me a language with which I can now communicate how I'm feeling. We were, Jim, I hope you don't mind me sharing this. We were having a bit of a moment in the car the other night where we were talking about something and we were getting spun up, and I'm like, I'm in the anxiety storm around the console right now, and I need a few minutes to like let go and calm down. And Jim, I don't know if that helped you maybe better understand where I was, but it was so nice for me to be able to be like, anxiety storm, Inside Out 2, that's what's going on, as opposed to like, well, what I'm feeling is blah, 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 and trying to articulate it,
Just as long as Jim doesn't say, well, then just brew yourself some anxiety. Sorry. That's if Jim's on the other side of the sarcasm.
Yeah. Oh, go sit in this chair and just drink some anxiety. Right. That's the way the movie handled it, kind of. But yeah. But I'm just happy that you've got the tools to recognize what's going on, right, and to deal with it now in the moment, right, and that's a whole nother story. But I think what I loved, so O'Reilly during the scene with the storm around the console is having a full-blown anxiety attack or panic attack with physical manifestations, right? We see that because it keeps flashing to her in the real world, and she is like melting down. She's having she's sitting in the penalty box at a hockey game and just having a complete breakdown, and you feel for her. But then, which is a very powerful moment, but then it doubles down and gets even more powerful for me anyway. Because, Will, like you said, like the storm swirling around, anxiety's in the middle, like totally glitched out and paralyzed, and it's like, what have I done? So to me, that was the most emotional part of the movie, because, like you said, anxiety is the antagonist, but not necessarily a malevolent one, right?
Yep.
I mean, everything that anxiety does as an emotion, that character feels like it's doing for the good of Riley and the rest of the emotions, but it's just taking over too strong and causing chaos. It's kind of like when the emotions get out of balance. But yeah, he looks at the camera, or they look at the camera and say, "What have I done?" And Joy steps in and tries to, help the situation. But yeah, that's a really powerful moment.
Yeah, Jim, I hear a little emotion in your voice as you talk
Yeah.
about it, and
Yeah.
that warms my heart because I know what
Yeah.
a softy and loving person you are.
Way
I love
down
that
deep, way down deep inside.
it's a lot closer to the surface, actually.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you bring up the physical manifestations of the anxiety storm. They also did a really good job with physical manifestations of the storm abating. Will, I don't know if it's like this for you, if you ever have like an anxiety attack or you're just really spun up, but like for me, as I start to kind of come down and start to reground myself again, it's almost like my sensations of the rest of the world were like dialed down to 50, and it's like they slowly come back up. Like if I'm sitting on a couch having anxiety and I'm coming out of it, I'm like rubbing the couch and like feeling the texture of the couch under my fingers. Or I can feel like the warmth of the sun like on my face all of a sudden. And I didn't feel it before. And as those physical sensations like through my skin happen, it helps me to feel grounded and connected again. And I was so fucking excited to see that they lingered on that with Riley. Like she's feeling the bench underneath her, like while she's sitting on it. Somebody opens a door and the sun kind of streams in and she kind of smiles a little as it like hits her face. And I've never seen that in a depiction of anxiety in a movie before. And that was another moment where I just started crying my eyes out because it was like, wow, it's just incredible.
So mine was sort of like, so mine's less the physical and more the like, everything else is like emotionally muted when I'm having an anxiety attack. And I mean, but and let me rephrase. I've had the like, I've spent stupid amounts of money at the emergency room because I thought I was having a heart attack, and it wasn't. It was anxiety, and of course you do the right thing. You go to the hospital, but and of course it's still costs you an arm and a leg because the even though the hospital's in your network, the doctor isn't. But that's a different story.
That's a whole nother show.
A different story. But for me, and this is something Scott will tell me sometimes, is like after I've had sort of like, I've been kind of down in the pit of it, like I'll usually end up being like, the moment I'm out of it, like kind of laughing and kind of cracking jokes and stuff like that. He's like, I don't understand how you can rebound so quick. And it's like, it's not really that. It's just like everything else was turned down. And now all of a sudden, just like kind of my ability to like sort of touch those other emotions gets turned back up to full blast. And so I can access them again. And so that was, so I think we went about it a different way, but we both experienced kind of what she was experiencing in relationship to how we deal with our own emotions. And that's what's so beautiful here. I will also say that this is a very beautiful movie in that it's just a visually beautiful movie. There was new technology that they created for the first Inside Out movie. This sort of like particle physics thing where like if you look at the characters, they're not just blobs. They're made of a bunch of tiny little dots that form the shape and the structure. That was in the first film. I think we've seen it now also in Elemental. We got to see some of those same physics there, and we get to see it play out a little bit more here as well. To the point where it feels seamless. Like I feel like in the first one, I was really taken by how good it looked, and so I would stop and like look at how good it looked. There were times where in this one where I took for granted how good it was looking because it just everything was so seamlessly, flawlessly beautiful that I would just come up for air every so often and go like, wow, look at that. Especially if like someone paused for a second and I could sort of see like some of those little dots sort of like moving against the background. I don't know. It never felt distracting. It wasn't graphics or animation that pulled away from the film.
What I think is so interesting about that is there's a moment toward the end where like all those little particles like clinging to Joy start to emanate off of her and go toward the console, right? And Sadness is like, Riley needs you.
She's like
but
pulling her.
Right. But all those particles, because you can see them when there's like close-ups and stuff, it's like, oh, they're little particle people. It was so neat to see them like come off and kind of flow through, and it was a really cool visual touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if either movie, other than the, showing them coming off of Joy, and going toward the console, I don't think there was another time in either movie where it like did anything profound with that construct. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things they could do. I mean, think of like the thing in Marvel, right, where everybody just like kind of like where certain people just like
Oh, the snap.
the snap, and they kind of it's like that, but not like that. So it's but certainly, the movie. Who knows what they're going to do in the future? I mean, that's another thing we maybe can talk about later. But one other thing I just want to mention, and maybe I don't know how many people here have either played hockey. I've played hockey at multiple levels, coached hockey. The hockey scenes here are actually really great. I mean, just the movements of the skates on the ice, the stick and the puck, and like the sounds. And the whole, all the time, a lot of this movie takes place during hockey action, right? And or on the ice or in the locker room with Riley. And it's the way it was captured, just like the way the feelings of anxiety is captured in this and characterized in the anxiety character was one of the feathers in this movie's cap. I think the way it portrays the ice hockey stuff is another one for those in terms of like a cinematography and like how the virtual camera moves while they're playing hockey. Like they're at ice level when the puck drops, and like it's pretty crazy how they did it. And technically, I think it's just wonderfully done. And something I noticed, and maybe nobody else noticed. And Alex says, "Yeah, but yeah."
So here's the thing: I've never played hockey, and I tried to ice skate once and fell and hurt myself pretty bad. So I haven't really spent any time out on the ice. But what really struck me about that, Jim, you've been watching hockey highlights lately.
I watch once in a while.
I usually will like sit there and watch with you for like a minute or two, and then I'm like, all right, time to go play Baldur's Gate or Diablo, if people are online. But I found myself getting more interested in those recently, and so from watching those with you, and then seeing hockey portrayed in this movie, the sound design is what stood out to me the most about it.
Yeah,
the sound of the stick on the ice, whether it's scraping or slapping, or the sound of the stick on the puck, or the way the skates, I guess, when you, what is it, like drift or
skate, I don't know what you call stop.
It. Right, stop. Like when like some of the ice like shoots,
you
like
spray the
scrapes.
Ice.
Yeah. It just it almost felt like, I don't know, something like they had a microphone inside a pair of ice skates or something, and we're catching all the sounds. But it was pretty awesome. It sounded just like real life, and it matched up with the action. And that part where Riley like accesses her memories of skating as a little girl, and then like starts figure skating to play hockey. I'm not a sports fan, but I started crying at a sports scene. Because you can draw on those things, and it just, Alex says that's rad, and that's absolutely fucking rad. Like, so because cool that they were able to do that.
Because she, and at the same time, and the movie showed this, she reconnected with the joy that she got from hockey or from skating, right? And they showed joy during those scenes, reasserting herself as kind of taking more control over what was happening with Riley, as opposed to just letting anxiety kind of run the show for a while.
I've actually never been ice skating because I'm terrified of going ice skating. There are knives on their feet, and I know that I will fall down and my fingers are going to get chopped off. I swear, I know that sounds funny. That is legit a reason why I've never gone ice skating before. Because Yeah.
Anxiety is at the console right now, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and yeah. Jim, you mentioned the reconnecting with joy thing. That brings to mind another really powerful moment that had me crying in the film. There's this moment where like they're chasing the MacGuffin, the sense of self, right? And they find it in the back of the mind. By the way, the
Yeah.
brain puns in these movies, I love them to death. But there's a moment where Joy is like defeated, right? Her toxic positivity through the whole movie has now been diffused. You know, her whole belief, like, we can get through anything, guys. We just have to try hard enough. Like, she comes to the realization, oh, hi, Cora. I have a little kitten visitor. She comes to the realization that, like, Joy, it's just not going to get the job done. And she literally says, maybe that's what happens when you grow up. You feel less joy. And holy fuck, is somebody who struggles with depression and has felt like that for years and is coming out of that thanks to some fantastic therapy and medication. It lands really fucking hard for me. And that cracked me open like a fucking egg. The rest of the movie, thank you, put me back together. But holy shit, was that powerful.
Yeah,
it was.
And the idea that it really comes from Joy also realizing in that moment that she spent so much time sort of like partitioning off to the back of the mind here,
Yes.
specifically the things that she found not useful for Riley. And this was part of Joy letting go and understanding that Riley has to be able to become her own person and form her own sense of self from all of these different negative and positive and terrifying and joyous and boring experiences that form who we are. I think that's great too, because it really creates a world here where our emotions don't have to be the thing that controls us. They're actually a part of us, but we still get to be at the helm. And I think that's something that this movie does that maybe the first one didn't. Feather in its cap, that lets us still have our own sense of self over our emotions.
Right. And I think the movie puts joy, the movie right then, at least for me, kind of galvanizes this image of like, okay, Joy is here doing what she thinks is the best thing. And anxiety's over here doing what they think is the right thing. Right. So really, who is more right and wrong? Right. It's almost like they're equal. Because Joy, the whole time, even though she's upbeat and happy, she's not doing any favors to Riley by taking all these troubling memories or instances through her life and just pushing them to the back of the mind, right? And not thinking about them, because it's causing Riley to have a distorted view of herself. Throughout the film, and that's a really powerful. It's almost a subtle thing in the movie, right? It's I don't know how many people would see that in this film, that joy is at really causing as much harm as anxiety is, because anxiety's got this big storm and blah blah blah. All this stuff is happening, but part of why that's happening is because of what Joy had done earlier. So it's quite profound, the ideas that this movie is dealing with.
It really is. And George in the chat says that it's partially acting as a coping mechanism, and coping mechanisms aren't always perfect, right? It goes really deep. And I identify a lot with that. I was doing the same thing Joy was doing. I was taking all the negative things, grief, anger, all that stuff, and like throwing them to the back of my mind, trying to compartmentalize them away, and just trying to focus on the positive. And I reached a point about a year ago where I was just like, you know what? I was talking to my therapist, and I'm like, I'm so fucking tired of being nice and trying to be happy all the time. Like I'm just done. And she's like, why are you trying to be that way all the time? You have more than one emotion. Haven't you seen Inside Out? And I'm like, shit, you're right. And so then we watch this fucking movie, and here we go. Like, integration of sense of self, like incorporating all of those things. And I think that was, the anxiety storm was huge. But I think the most important message in this movie for me was letting all of the negative things, the bad things, the not so great things, the mixed things, also blend into you and become
Mhm.
part of your sense of self. And then it gives you superpowers because it's like you learn lessons from those things. So you don't do those things again. You become a more complete, complex person who can fucking relate to other people when they're having a terrible time and they're struggling. So I love this idea of like integration. I've been working on integration therapy with like grief and anger and stuff like that. And just to see it represented in a kids movie like this is
crazy.
pretty incredible. But also, like, what I love about this is I think most kids are going to watch this and not get a lot of it. Right? There's a lot there for them to get and understand. Yeah, but like when those same kids are like in their 20s and little nostalgia grandma comes out and she's like, "Do you remember Inside Out? Let's watch those movies again." They're going to watch them again and be like, Holy shit, I never realized this when I was a kid, but oh my God, right? I think that's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, Jim, is now the point of the show where we talk about nostalgia.
I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to. We have limited time. I don't want to get. This is just a personal thing. I just didn't care so much for the treatment of nostalgia. It was kind of handled as a joke. Like, the old lady's a joke because she's nostalgic. And I guess 13-year-olds don't have nostalgia for anything because they're not They're not old enough. Like, they don't remember the city that they used to live in and the school that they went to and their old friends. Like, I don't know. It doesn't really make sense. And it was done for a joke. So I didn't really dig that part of the movie. I get it. It was done for a joke. Whatever. It's fun to laugh at the old people. But I didn't think that was handled very well. I would prefer they just kind of left it out of the movie for now and maybe brought it in later. So yeah, there's that. But I did want to talk about like where does this franchise go from here? So we have this movie here, Inside Out 2, that we said Will had brought this up earlier that maybe kids weren't connecting with this movie very well. Where does it go next? Because Disney-Pixar kind of depends, butters its bread on family viewing and a younger audience being kind of tied to their movies. So as Riley gets older, are they aging themselves out of an audience? I guess is my question. Or put it this way, aging themselves out of part of their audience because you're not really, if the movie keeps going in a direction of like older Riley, kids are going to connect with it even less, possibly.
So
it's interesting to think about.
Yes, I will say that I think the fact that it's not as accessible for like younger kids is not necessarily like a mark against the movie, right? Because I think that to Brad's point, you can age up with the movie and age up with the story. I think the closest parallel is actually Toy Story. Because the character of Andy grows up through this, and we have to deal with the idea of what are you if a toy played with by a kid? What are you if you're a toy played by a kid who's no longer really playing with toys? What are you a kid who is a toy that now your kid goes off to college, or now you're handed along to like another set of kids? So I think there is still a world where like you can keep going with these types of things in that regard. Like, I think a fantastic one would be, and this is just what I would watch, give me a story where Riley is now in high school or beginning of college or something like that, and she's having to deal with like romantic because
feelings,
then what you can have is there's a lot of emotions that are all going to take turns at the wheel there, and even letting yourself get maybe jealousy becomes a character who comes out and does some stuff there, and becomes sort of the antagonist to that one. I would like to see that because I think that I think that's super valuable. And then I would also be down to see one where it's like Inside Out 4. It's like her wedding day and she's dealing with some of the shit from all of that. Yes, younger kids won't necessarily connect, but I think at this point Pixar is able to make movies for a wide variety of audiences. And like again, like the point in Toy Story 3 where they're all to the point of being so obsolete that they're about to be incinerated. Like that's not a scene for small kids, but as adults who are starting to figure like, do I still have a place in this world, or my better days behind me? We can connect to that, right? So I want to see more of this franchise. There's plenty of things Pixar can do for kids, for younger kids. Throw a fifth Cars movie in, I don't give a shit. Just keep making these and keep them emotionally mature, whatever that happens to be. Make these emotionally mature,
emotionally appropriate for whatever phase of life their character goes through, right? Yeah. The only difference is like with Toy Story, the toys created their own stories. They didn't create a story for the owner of the, you know what I mean? Like it's a little bit different. And so we were invested in kind of those toys on their own journeys and stuff. But yeah, I could definitely see different phases of life being represented in these Inside Out movies. And you're right. What was the movie that Pixar did about the jazz musician?
Soul.
Soul. That was one that probably didn't resonate very much with kids, but more with adults. Yeah. So you're right, Will. They could definitely make. They'd have to choose to make a movie that is targeted more for adults, and with the understanding of they're not going to have as many children jumping on here, except if they just want to see the characters, the emotion characters. Yeah. We'll go see a Minions movie or something.
Oh boy. Well, I think honestly there's probably another hour of stuff we could talk about that we haven't tapped into yet. But we don't have that kind of time because we have some things that we want to talk about outside of this film as well. But Will, Jim, anything else that you're dying to get out about this movie before we transition?
No, not really. No, I think we've talked about most of it.
I'll put the rest in. Any other thoughts? I'll shove them down into my pouch and we'll pull them out later.
Oh my God, we didn't even fucking talk about Bloofy and Pouchy.
Ron Funches and James Austin Johnson from Saturday Night Live as Bloofy and Pouchy. Yeah, super funny. Jim's not as into it.
I wasn't.
I'm Pouchy.
Yeah, I wasn't. It felt like a total tone change of the movie. I think when those were in it, I don't know. I think that whole part of it, like with them being locked up in the vault and on their journey and stuff, I thought that was kind of like my least favorite part of it, least connected part of it. And granted, I am not a Blue's Clues watcher. I know nothing. Maybe I just didn't connect with it because I have no affinity for what that stuff is based on, I guess. It just felt like, who are these characters? Why is there just like a freaking dancing fanny pack? You know what I mean, on the screen?
It's just the idea of like, when you're 13, you're still got one foot in childhood and you still like childish shit, but you're now supposed to be embarrassed about liking the childish shit. And so you're kind of stuck between both worlds there. And so I think Brad and I were ahead of the Blues Clues age. Like we were already kind of past that. But there's a group of people who are probably in their 30s right now who are watching this, who probably went through this exact same thing and were like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I remember the exact moment when I had to stop doing this. And I don't remember what ours was, Brad, but I know that we had stuff like when we started getting into junior high and high school, we're like, oh yeah, I was never into that.
I went through that. So when I got into middle school, kids, I had, whole side story, but I was at a brand new school starting 6th grade and people are like, "Oh, what's your favorite cartoon?" And I'm like, "I fucking love." Well, I didn't say fucking because I didn't use swear words back then. I actually didn't. I'm weird. I grew up on
That's
a
true.
farm, but
Making up
but
for
I was
lost
like,
time now.
I am. But I was like, I really love He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and the other kids were like, that thing babies watch with the magic sword. You like that? And I was like, oh, fuck. Well, I didn't say fuck, but, so I experienced that. But then I also learned that, like, so fucking what? Like, for me, it would be like Battle Cat's hanging around in the vault somewhere. But, like, I blew the doors off the vault, and, like, Battle Cat is, like, sleeping on a cat tree, like, in the living room of my head right now. And it's totally okay to like things that we liked when we were little.
Alex said here in chat, like Care Bears and Rainbow Bright. I had Care Bears. I had not as much Rainbow Bright. My sister had Rainbow Bright, but there was like one of her little sidekicks was this little stuffed white star thing called Twink, which is funny in retrospect. But I had Twink, and I enjoyed playing with that little fluffy star thing. And I've probably have not thought about that thing for like 15, 20 years now, until literally this moment just like busted the door open of the vault for me. But yeah, it's another one of those things where you just, the stuff you like as a kid, you push. So I think that's what was good here. And also Riley's goofy. We got to see she has a goofy island as one of her islands too. So it would make sense that she still likes some of these goofy things, but she also likes some of these, like, got a crush on video game things, but now she's got her friends, and she contains multitudes, right? That's her thing. That's all of our thing.
All right.
What one thing the movie did well was along that line, Will, I think it did show like her loving this band. I forget what the name of the band was in the movie. Remember?
Get Up and Glow.
Get Up and Glow, right?
Yeah,
she was way into Get Up and Glow when they were in middle school. Now they're entering high school, and it's like that's not what the cool kids listen to, right? So she's got to create the sarcasm, which I thought was incredibly funny and a great concept, and visually a great concept too. I thought that worked really well. And the other thing was the video game character that they put in here.
Oh my god!
Funny.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a contradiction. I love the video game character, which was totally out of tone for the movie, but I didn't like the bloofy and pouchy stuff.
That's okay. That's all right. But speaking of the vault, all right, we're going to end this discussion on a vulnerable note. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing that would like get you in trouble with the law if they were to hear it. But what is one big dark secret from when you were a kid that you can share right now? Let it out of your vaults. Let it breathe.
I don't know. I'm accessing the vault. I'm trying to remember what's back there. I'm trying to think.
All right.
It's all in the memory dump.
Yeah.
All right.
I may not have a good one right now.
Okay.
What's going to happen is an hour after we finish the show, I'm going to go like, oh my God, in third grade, it's going to like just like come spilling out.
All right.
Do you have one, Brad? Maybe you'll.
I'll share one. We'll see if it sparks something. But so we were latchkey kids, and our parents worked till like 7:00 at night. So we would come home from school, and we'd have to like do our chores, but like watch TV, do our homework by ourselves. Well, we came home one time. This is before cell phones, by the way. And we spent the whole time after we got home, my sister and I, from like 3:30 until almost 7, just watching TV and goofing off instead of cleaning up the house and doing our homework. And rather than admit that to our parents, we intentionally locked ourselves out of the house so that we could say we forgot our house keys and couldn't get in and had to wait outside the whole time.
It's a good one.
Parents don't know that.
Let it out, Brad.
Dad, if you're watching.
I do have
you could have told him that 2 weeks ago.
I could have.
Mine's not the first thing that came to mind really isn't actually a secret as much as just a thing that I remember really pissing me off when I was a kid. And so that's what I'll share. It's like a thing that like happened that I still to this day, like I look back on and go just like, ooh, I'm mad on behalf of myself. I was a good, like, you know, good speller, good at math. Like, you know, I was like, I was good at, I was good at school. And we had this, like, it was like third or fourth grade, and we had a spelling bee, and in my brain, I thought the spelling bee was going to be like way worked on television, right? You'd have like an auditorium, and someone would get called up onto the stage, and someone with a microphone would say, "Your word is movie theater," or whatever it is, and then you'd spell it into the microphone, and it would just be this little moment like that. What they did for us was we had this giant, just gymnasium that was just like brick walls, brick floor, and they set up 8 tables, and they called you up to one of the tables at a time, and they called me up there, and they said, "Your word is," and so they whisper the word so that other people can't hear it. I couldn't hear the word they whispered to me, and I said, can and in retrospect, I now know that I have sort of like an auditory processing thing that I didn't know I had when I was a kid. But like, I can't tell certain sounds when especially when there's a lot of other noises in an echoey gymnasium with other people whispering all around. So I said, "Can you repeat it?" And they said, "Yes, we can repeat it one time." So the word is so. And I still, to this day, I have no idea what it was. I just said, I can't, I have no idea. And so I was out on the first round because I couldn't hear the damn word. I was so pissed off. I carried that with me for so long, to the point where I think I still carry it. Like
it's your fault that they, you know, it was a whisper. Like,
I wanted this moment of being on the stage and like spelling the word. I remember like a Charlie Brown cartoon where there was a spelling bee, and they kind of got eliminated as they got further. Yeah. That was what I thought it was going to be. I'm going to be a part of this. I've been practicing my spelling words like all, and then just that. So it's not a dark secret. I didn't have a good one for that, but it is just a thing that like popped out of the vault just now.
Sorry, Will. The word was.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, thanks for playing along, sharing some memories. We're going to go ahead and I guess wrap the show. Oh, no, we can't wrap the show yet. We were all set to, but plugs have to happen.
But plugs. Yeah.
But plugs find a way.
Yeah, but plugs have to go into the really big thing that we do on this show in talking about
they
movies.
Go into the end of this episode.
They really do.
They go in the end. Yes, they do.
They go in the end, and that's where you you know, for our listeners, you kind of like seed things inside of that thing. Okay, anyway. This has gone off the rails and I kind of love it. But welcome to Plugs, the part of the show where we put things we love on your radar in hopes that you will love them too. Jim, why don't you get us started? What have you got for plugs this week?
It's funny. I watched this movie. It's an old movie from 1968, movie I'd never seen before. But the way I got to this movie was kind of weird. I saw I go through YouTube once in a while and I watch like kind of true crime stuff. And this one little story, a news story bit came up, and I watched it. And it was about this woman who, her dad passed away. I mean, this woman's probably 40 or something. And her dad on her deathbed told her that he wasn't who she thought he was. He was a totally different person. He had a different name and a different life before he was her dad. And actually, he was a person who the FBI had been looking for like, I don't know how many years, 45, 50 years. He had robbed a bank in some town, got away with like $250,000, which was a big deal at the time. And like, we're talking like the late 60s or early 70s. And nobody found him. They never found him until he was on his deathbed. He told her which knew, you know, his real name and stuff, which was incredible. And so that created a podcast called My Fugitive Dad, which I started listening to. But that's not my plug. The movie that I'm going to plug is a movie that her dad got his inspiration from to become this adventuresome master criminal, uh, you know, dude, and kind of do like a DB Cooper kind of thing where it was called the Thomas Crown Affair. And this is a movie starring Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway, two massive stars at the time from 1968. Steve McQueen's this debonair. He's like cool as fuck. And he's already rich. He's already got millions, but he decides to rob this bank just because he can. And it's a heist. It's the first third is a heist movie. The second 2/3 is kind of a romantic, like twisted thing where Faye Dunaway is an insurance investigator trying to figure out who did the bank robbery, and of course she's in love with the Steve McQueen character Thomas Crown. So anyway, the movie's called The Thomas Crown Affair. It's available on Prime. The cinematography is fantastic. The acting is great. The characters are great. It's very stylized in a way that is so 60s, I guess, and early 70s. But check it out. I think it's worth watching.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that one. The world needs a little more Steve McQueen love, I think.
Steve
and Faye
McQueen
Dunaway
heist movie. Yeah, baby.
That's right. That's right. And you can't forget about the icon that is Faye Dunaway. I mean, come on. Well, thank you for sharing that. Will, what about you? What's one butt plug that goes into your list of things you want people to know about?
So this last, I would say 2 weeks or so, I've really been hitting a lot of like older movies a lot. Part of it's because I'm doing this thing called the Criterion Challenge this year on Letterboxd, where basically 52 different movies, whatever your criteria are, there's like a little checklist type thing for it. So I've been really kind of marathoning some films there. And one that I came across that has been on my radar for a while, but I always push it back. You know, you do the thing where you're just like, not today. And so it's perpetually at the top of your watch list for like years, is a movie from 1973 called The Spirit of the Beehive. This movie is the goods. And again, I'm kicking myself for not watching it sooner. This is a Spanish film. It's sort of set in the aftermath of the Spanish Civil War. You've got this really rural town, and someone comes into town with like a projector and plays the 1931's Frankenstein for the village. And there's this one girl there named Anna, and she's like 5 or 6 years old, and she's confused by what she's watching. You know, she immediately goes, "Why did the little girl have to die? Why did the monster have to die?"
Spoilers for Frankenstein.
Spoilers for Frankenstein, yeah. And she
God
has a,
darn it! Jesus.
No!
Just kidding.
Yeah. She has an older sister who only a couple years older, but kind of fucks with her a little bit. And she's like, first of all, it's like, no, I mean, it's fake. It's a movie. It's not real. But then it's like, oh, there's like a spirit that's like this spirit that, and I go talk to the spirit sometimes. And this little girl is so kind of wide-eyed and naive at kind of that age of her life that she sort of believes it and tries to talk to the spirit too. And when she goes out there, she finds that the barn where that spirit's supposed to be, there's a soldier from that Spanish Civil War who is injured, and she tries to befriend him kind of the same way that the little girl befriends Frankenstein in the movie, and then things happen. Oh, cool. It's one of the best like child performances I've ever seen. Not that she's like, it's this masterclass of acting, but the filmmaker lets this girl who is still at that sort of wide-eyed and naive sort of stage of life still carry that into the film. This movie has a minor blend of fantasy and realistic to a point. This movie, if this movie did not exist, and he's gone out and said this, Guillermo del Toro would not have made Pan's Labyrinth. which this is the movie that directly inspired him to make this movie. So I strongly recommend it. Again, it's in Spanish, so you have to be comfortable with subtitles, but it's The Spirit of the Beehive, and it's really good. It's just it's way better than I was even expecting it to be. It was not a homework film like I had kind of put to the back of my it ended up being just a genuine, I got a 4.5-star watch for me.
And by the way, it's available on Criteria for some of us who might have Criterion, which I do. And so it's now on my list to go see, especially where you said it kind of inspired Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And also when you mentioned movie homework, I immediately thought of the Green Screen of Death podcast guys, because they used to do that movie homework thing, which by the way, I miss those guys and I miss that podcast, and I don't know if they're doing any more right now, but I used to love doing their homework assignments because it would introduce me to great movies, which I hope our plug section does for everybody listening. So yes, The Spirit of the Beehive. I will check it out.
I would recommend checking out while we're playing. Marina Antunes, who did some stuff with them. I know Bill from Green Screen and a couple other people. He's been as part of the after the credits show for the last several episodes. So it's another good place to check out if you want to at least get some of that fixed. Although I do miss the Green Screen guys as well.
Yes, count me among those who miss Green Screen of Death as well. Glad we can stay connected with Adrian and Bill, though. Definitely love those wonderful people so much. Will, thank you for your plug as well. From me this week, I couldn't decide between one or the other, so I'm just going to do 2 mini plugs. And I know you guys will forgive me because you've all done it before too. So
yeah,
I don't
even need lube for the mini ones.
Oh my God. That's true sometimes. But two mini plugs. One, season 2 of My Adventures with Superman, the animated Superman show on Max, came out a couple weeks ago. I've been catching up with that, and holy shit, season 2 is just as good, if not better, than season 1 was. It's one of my favorite animated versions of Superman, which is interesting because I'm not like a super anime person. Nothing wrong with anime, just outside of a few, it hasn't really grabbed me much. But this show is like the perfect blend of like some anime fun, really cool art style, but also some really serious shit. And it's a very cool take on the Superman mythos. I agree, Alex Vogel. He says, so good. I am super into My Adventures with Superman, maybe not super into anime, but maybe I haven't found the right animes. It's serious anime, like Neon Genesis Evangelion, I love. But like the goofy animes, maybe not as much.
Gotta get on that Delicious in Dungeon, Brad. You gotta get on it.
I know you mentioned it, but like I just don't. I even hate like cooking in games. Like it's my least favorite part of like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is like the cooking shit, and I'm afraid that it's just that.
No, it's the closest thing I've seen in a while to actually playing Dungeons and Dragons, but. But this is still your plug. Sorry.
I mean, it's fine. I know you plugged it last weekend. It does sound cool. Maybe I'll check it out. I'm not a fan of cooking stuff. So, but I like British Bake Off. So who knows? Maybe I'll check it out.
Right.
And then the other plug was just House of the Dragon is back. Season 2, the Game of Thrones prequel show. I know not as many people are as excited about this show, but it's back with a vengeance, literally, and I loved the first episode. One of my big complaints about the first season was it was shot very dark and with like all natural lighting, and like you can barely see shit in like 3/4 of the episodes. They took that feedback, it was heard. There's like candles everywhere in every scene now, which is kind of funny, but like at least you can see people and their facial reactions. Maybe if we had like a $5,000 TV when it was airing last year, we could have seen things better. But I think they're trying to course correct a little bit. So that was really nice.
Good plugs. It's a good show. The House of the Dragon show is very good. The production quality is very high. My one big issue with it is there's too many characters, too many white-haired characters with names that end in Eris. I'm just, that's just the way.
Jaehaerys, Viserys.
There's got to be 15 of them. There's got to be 15. Yeah, it's weird.
It's like the name game song. It's like Daenerys, Banana Fana, Jaehaerys.
Oh, somebody
be
needs
my
to make
Momaris.
that. Somebody needs to make that.
Be the
Daenerys.
change you want. Make it Jim, Brad.
Daenerys.
Make that be the. I don't want to say change you want to see in
We
the
could
world.
make
Be
that.
the name game you want to see.
That would be fun. That would be great. We should totally do it. But like we steal clips, not steal. We repurpose clips from the show when they're like introducing themselves. So it's like instead of like Daenerys, it's like Daenerys. Anyway, it could be great.
Oh my god.
Alex Fogel says we should do it, so obviously we should. Anyway, thanks for letting me go with 2 mini butt plugs. Sometimes you're just not stretched out enough to have like one giant plug go in.
Requires a lot of
couple
stretching.
little ones. Yeah, and maybe just kind of like giving yourself grace, right, as you ease into things. Is
That's a
totally
form of
okay.
giving yourself grace.
All right, let's wrap this mofo up. Jim Pulafko, if people want to connect between now and the next time we record, how can they chat with you online?
You could find my movie stuff, ratings and mostly ratings, some reviews on Letterboxd. That's an app that you can easily get on your phone. It's a free app, and it's great for looking at what people think about movies. And it's my handle there is at JJP Out West, all one word. And then you can find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right, thank you. William Lindis, Mr. Married himself. How can people chat with you?
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, find me on Facebook. Look for William Lindis. Check out the wedding video. It's there. You can see it, as well as a bunch of photos and just things from the ceremony. It was fun. You can also find me on Letterboxd. Look for the Movie Bear. And aside from that, I'm on X and Instagram and TikTok and several different platforms. Letterboxd and Facebook are the best, but I exist in the other places too. So come say hi wherever you feel most comfortable.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. Folks, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one that likely has Chub, Chaser, Bear, Dolphin, Wolf, whatever friends in common with you. Please send a message first so I know you aren't a bot. But I realized in telling you to do that, if you are a bot, maybe I've given you the secret. What have I done? You can also find me on Letterboxd and X at iBrad Pro. It's like iPad Pro, but iBrad because that's my first name. Clever, right? So fun. Okay, anyway. Thanks so much for joining us this week, everybody. Man, we had a ton of people on from Twitter, of all places. I have a new breakdown in this new interface we have in the streaming service we use that tells me where people are coming from. And there's like 100 people on Twitter right now. Unfortunately, they're not able to chat with us. It's read only on X, I guess. So Elon Musk, please get on that if you could. That would be great. But for those who were in the live chat, George and Alex, this is the romper room part of the show, and everybody else who joined us tonight, Cisco, there were a bunch of people. It was great to hear your thoughts. We didn't get to read them all while we were doing our thing, but it was great to be able to pull your comments in as they were topical and connected. We love and adore all of you folks. It's so crazy that this is episode 509 of the show. We're still going strong. Who knows? Maybe 510 will be the last. Maybe 5010 will be the last. We'll have to see. But either way, thanks so much for tuning in and making us feel pretty damn special by saying hi and interacting. We appreciate y'all. We'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.